So, so the last two times that we have sat together, we have picked up fear and teacher. When I look at both of these on one frame, I can see that both of them are ideas. And as we had discussions about these ideas, we also gradually unfolded the fact that these ideas have had a certain lifetime. They have traveled. So today I want to pick up another idea. I would want to historically contextualize it, and I would want both of us to look at this idea together and try to explore how it has developed, how it has gradually become something else. And in this historical method, I would try to question the idea in itself. So the idea that I have decided to talk about today is work. So in our common parlance, there is a certain way in which this idea is talked about. There is a certain attitude that we have about this idea. So let me give you an example. If I am playing cricket in a ground and somebody calls me up and asks me, "What are you doing?" I can't say, I can say anything, but I can't say I'm working. And in contrast to this, if I am sitting in my room doing my homework, which is going to produce a particular end in the class tomorrow, then I can easily say that I am working. So this idea, I would also contextualize this historically, but today in 21st century, the way this idea is adopted, the way it is being talked about, this one thing is common, that work is something for which you have to exert yourself. There is a certain physical, mental activity, but activity not of any kind, right? Activity which will produce a particular end. So you and I are talking now, and had this camera not been here, we could have not confidently said that we are working, right? People sit in their rooms and they talk at length about topics. They can't say that they are working. However, if a camera is being put there and the same discussion is being uploaded on YouTube and it serves a particular purpose for those discussants, they can claim that they were working. So work, I'm not saying that this is the established idea. Yes, it is certainly established in the sense that it is prevalent today, right? So work, a certain kind of activity which is a means to an end. Now, after having said this, let me try to contextualize the whole idea of work. So when I think about this work, so being a literature student, I read this Christian doctrine, this biblical myth about Adam and Eve. So let me go back almost 6,000 years, 3,900 BC. So Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, and God has said unto Adam that the entire existence is there to serve you. Okay, enjoy yourself, do everything that you wish to, just don't do one thing. You all know what that thing is, which is prohibited. God has said to Adam, do everything, but just don't eat this apple, right? This is a forbidden fruit. And you all know the story. Then the Satan Lucifer steps in. He convinces Eve, then Eve convinces Adam, and so on and so forth. The outcome is that God, the Father, has now Adam and Eve standing in front of him, and God says, "See, you have done what I told you to not to do, and now there has to be a punishment, right?" And there is a punishment that is given to Adam, and very interestingly, that punishment that is given to Adam is that now he will have to work. Earlier there was no need to work. The existence was there to serve him, right? If he wanted food was available. If he wanted water was available. Everything was available. Now, since that Adam has sinned, and this is the original sin, since that Adam has sinned, God is informing Adam that, dude, now you'll have to work. Now you'll have to earn your livelihood. And God says to Adam, and I'm quoting, that by the sweat of your brow, you will have to earn your food until you return to the ground. And this is very interesting. So this is one particular definition of what work is. Work is by definition miserable. Work is by definition something you are not interested in. Work is by definition...
Repeat that.
Repeat what?
By the sweat of your brow.
By the sweat, okay, I'll quote it in as many words. It says, by the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food. By the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food until you return to the ground. So God has said this to Adam. Adam is of course not very happy. God says, do this for 930 years. 930 years. Your life is of 930 years and you are doomed to do this. So work, what are the key points that we have touched upon? Work is something which is a kind of a punishment. It has been commanded upon you. You never really wanted to do it. It is by definition miserable. And you are doing it for somebody. You are not doing it for yourself. You are doing for somebody and it is miserable. Now Adam has started working and we are, as we all know, the succeeders of Adam. So Adam has started working. Adam works. And interestingly, it is work which distinguishes the life in paradise from the world we know today. In the life of paradise, there was no work. And then the paradise got lost and then work stepped onto earth. Now let me shift, let me take a big leap and come to Saint Augustine, 396 AD, the Bishop of Hippo. Now what he does is, after these many years, what he does is he resurrects this idea. Orthodox Christianity, Catholicism, he says, see, what the sin that Adam has committed, we will have to pay for it. And he says, and I'm quoting, from this cup of sorrow, no one will be excused. From this cup of sorrow, no one will be excused. The cup that Adam has pledged will have to be drunk, must be drunk. So again, the same idea that you have to work and you have to work for a particular end. Work is by definition miserable. You never really wanted to do it, but since you have committed a sin and God has punished you, you'll have to do it. Okay, there is a reward, but only afterwards. Only after you have died. So if you want a compensation, okay, when you will die, you will go to heaven, right? As we have today, you work from 1st to 30th, and on the 1st of the next month you get your salary. So work by definition is miserable. Work by definition is something that you never really ever wanted to do. It is kind of a commandment that has been enforced into you from some authority. Now as time has progressed, as time progresses, this idea of work also changes. Now we have come to 12th century. People like Michelangelo, people like Leonardo da Vinci, Renaissance has stepped in. People are trying to question this authority of religion, and Darwin will come afterwards. But people are actually questioning this authority of God and this whole idea of creation. People like these artists, these painters, now they are trying to radicalize this whole idea of work. They are working for monarchs, they are working for kings, but not just for money. They are working also to find a certain kind of fulfillment. So when Leonardo da Vinci goes to Charles I's palace and builds the entire ceiling, he does not do that merely for money, or money which for Adam's case was a particular end. Now end is, so the definition has changed slightly. Okay. Now let's move further. There is somebody called Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism. He just switches the game. He says, and I'm quoting, he says that it's not about, I'm not quoting, it's not about what you have been commanded to do. Work is not about a particular end. Work is also in milking the cow. Work is also in what a cobbler does. Work is inherent. Work is immanent. And you have to work for the sake of it. So the idea has got reversed. Then Marx comes 700 centuries later. Marx says that the only sole problem with capitalism is not that the laborers are not paid well, not anything else, but the work that the laborers have to do is very boring, very alienating. Right? A laborer is standing the entire day, and what the person is doing, that the ramp is that the boxes come in front of him, and all he has to do is just tie ribbons. 5,000 boxes one day, just tie ribbons. Marx says work is very boring. Work has to be a means to not just to earn your livelihood, but also to find meaning, right? And now in these three people, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, these three sets, right? I've made a long sweep, but still. So this was one set: God, Christian doctrine, Another set was of Saint Augustine, where one particular idea of work was prevalent. The other set comprises of artists, creative people who are looking at the idea of work, Martin Luther, Marx, and they are saying, no, work is not just about earning livelihood. It's also about trying to find out meaning in life. It's also about creativity. So this another idea steps in. Now we are sitting today in 21st century, and we are face to face with both these ideas of work, both these perspectives upon work. And at this note, I want to ask you, right? I want to ask you a couple of questions, keeping in context the quick recap that I have done of this idea of work. So interestingly, when I googled the meaning of work, these are the three meanings that I found out, and they're very interesting. Exertion or effort directed to produce or accomplish something. A job or activity that you do regularly, especially in order to earn money. A physical or mental effort or activity directed towards the production or accomplishment of something. In all the three definitions, nowhere are we talking about the process. In all three definitions, we are talking about the end. So I'm throwing up certain questions to you. The first question is, what is work? Is work one of these two definitions, or is work something else entirely? What is work? Does one today, a man of 21st century, has the potential to be creative in the work? We all know the kind of professions that are prevalent. People are working in BPOs, zero creativity. There is no scope for creativity. People are security guards, no scope of creativity. People are delivering pizzas and stuff. There is no scope of creativity at all. So if work is dual, earning livelihood plus finding meaning, is there a possibility in today's world that one can actualize this ideal, also earn money, also earn livelihood, and at the same time find some meaning in it? Question number one, what is work? Is this one of these two definitions or something else entirely? And if work is one of these two definitions, then is there a possibility with today's man that one can sit, look around and find a profession where both these ideals can be clubbed together? You can also work for an end, earn money, earn livelihood, and also enjoy the process. Right? These two questions that I want to throw up to you, and then we will move on.
See a few fundamentals. You have started off by saying that there are two prevalent ideas with respect to work. The first is that work is just a means to secure a salary or a position, a livelihood. The second is the artist's view or the painter's view, that it is not only the salary that counts, but fulfillment is important. Whenever you come across two contrasting ideas, and you have given me what look like two contrasting ideas. Whenever you come across two contrasting ideas, you should understand there is no contrast at all. Because an idea is an idea. No idea can be the opposite of another idea. All ideas depend on each other and support each other. All ideas are dualistic in nature. You see, one man says work is a means to gain money. The other man says work is a means to gain fulfillment. And you tout these two as two opposite things? Seriously? But that is what we have today, right? When one thing fails, we present another thing as a substitute. When one idea shows up as inadequate, all that we can offer is another idea. What are these two people doing? The first is saying work in order to get money. The other man is saying work in order to get fulfillment. But both are united in their self-assessment. Both are saying that we are deficient. One is saying I am deficient because I need money. The other is saying I am deficient because I need fulfillment. Now, how is the demand for fulfillment any more sublime or advanced or respectable than the demand for hardcore material, money? Don't you see that both are saying essentially the same thing? In fact, that is the reason why this second man who is seeking fulfillment will never be able to convince the first man. The first man will say, your fulfillment lies in some abstract achievement. When you look at your painting, your heart really swells up and you call it fulfillment. My fulfillment lies in more tangible achievement. When I look at my bank account, my heart swells up. What painting is to your mind, my bank statement is to my mind. Who are you to dictate that a painting is more pious than a bank statement? Who are you to dictate that? And the second man will hardly have an answer. So, we will have to broaden the scope of this discussion beyond what you have presented. It is not about looking at these two things. We'll have to start from scratch. Right? Work, knowledge, punishment, ignorance. Add fulfillment to that list. Work, knowledge, punishment, ignorance, fulfillment. What is the relation between these? Are they different? Are they one? Are they merely interrelated? One thing we would all agree on, whatever you call as work involves some kind of a movement by the organism. Either a mental movement of thoughts or a physical movement of limbs and labor. Does it not?
Yes.
Alright. So, work firstly involves movement. Without movement, we cannot say work is happening. Movement has to happen somewhere. Only then do you say that work is happening. Now, where does this movement come from? What is the quality of this movement? As I say something to you, movement has happened. My vocal cords have moved. A wave have moved. Wave has progressed from here to your eardrums. Things have moved.
Right.
Material has moved. From where is this movement coming? What is the quality of this movement? What is the quality of this movement? There is a particular movement that happens because I want something. I want something very central, very essential. I perceive myself to be lacking in it. And so the movement is happening. Then why would the movement happen? The movement would happen in order to get that essential thing. And there is a movement that happens because I have something. Both give rise to movement. There is a movement that happens, there is an action that happens because I feel I lack something. The starting point is a feeling of
lack.
And there is a movement that happens because I feel that I
Complete.
have something. Right? Now, any kind of action can happen from either of these beginnings. Let's call these beginnings as origins. So there are two possible origins. One, I do not have it, so let me exert myself to
Towards having
get it. The second origin is, I already have it. Now, in the sheer joy of having it, let me move. I have it. Now let me move. Now, beyond this, there is no real distinction. You cannot label a particular kind of work as coming from this origin or that origin. One can work for money from the origin of fullness. Now that sounds paradoxical to the conditioned mind. Conditioned mind says, if you feel already full, then why are you working for money? And many moral people would raise objections. They would say, no. The one who is already full is in a state of moksha or samadhi and he will no more need money. So why would he work for money? Not really so. And from the origin of hollowness, of incompleteness, one can work in the service of so-called God or salvation. And again, the moral mind, the ignorant mind would look at this work and say, this man is really a spiritual man, a realized man. See, he is working towards God. What he would not realize is that he is working towards God from a totally wrong origin. And when I say wrong, I am not making a value judgment. I am presenting a fact. We'll take more of that a little later. Why the second origin is really wrong. Understand this very clearly. You could be very, very full, and yet your action could have all the signs, marks, and labels of what has been traditionally thought to be the actions of an ignorant being. Being totally full, you can still be angry for a bowl of sugar. It's all right. Being totally full, you can still chase someone for sex. It is all right. Yes, of course. The dumb and ignorant eye, looking at this happening, would say that this person is a hypocrite. He could not be internally full. Had he been internally full, how could he have been chasing sex? See, don't construe my statements to mean that being internally full, you must do all these things. I just want to strike at a few stereotypes. That's why I must talk of them. Fact is, we all face paradoxes. Paradoxes don't exist. Have you ever seen two facts fighting with each other? Imaginations fight with each other. Facts never fight with each other. Facts always support each other. Have you ever seen facts in disagreement with each other? But our life is full of disagreements. What does that prove?
We are not living in facts.
We do not live in facts. Facts only complement, support, and complete each other. So that is why we must strike down a few things as not being factual. What happens is you look at a so-called material man. And why do you call him a material man?
Because he's outwardly material.
Because he's outwardly material. And then if somehow life presents you with evidence that he has a deep inner calm within, then what do you have in front of you? A paradox. Now, paradox cannot exist. It only means that you are living in imaginations. You cannot reconcile these two things, right? That how can a man who seems to be chasing desires outwardly be inwardly settled, composed, and full? And you say, no, this is not possible.
Rationality does not support it.
It does not support it. But it is possible. Provided, as we said, we strike at these stereotypes. So this whole great confusion on work stands resolved. And the resolution is so simple that the question seems a little stupid. There was no confusion at all. Only confusions are prolonged, elongated. Solutions are simple. All that matters is where you are coming from. What is your self-concept? What is your self-assessment? Do you have any self-clarity? Clear of who you are. It becomes irrelevant what you are doing. Why focus so much on the doing, on the work? Do whatever you want to. Who has the authority to judge you? Who has the authority to judge you? Just ensure that you are sitting at the right place, that your center is good. What would you do sitting on that center is an irrelevant question, because what you do will be dictated by the demands of the time, and times keep changing. Times keep changing not only from century to century or millennia to millennia or decade to decade, but they are changing every moment. So every moment would be the opportunity for a fresh action. We cannot enlist all the possible actions. We cannot. So what would be done? Is an irrelevant question to ask and an impossible question to answer. What would be done? Only you can know. Only you can know. But what I can say is, who will do it? And one must be able to ask the right questions in life. Answers don't matter. Never ask what to do. Ask who is doing it. Now the thing about why does the second origin exist at all? Why is man subjected to the punishment of ignorance? And what is ignorance?
But sir, if you allow me, before you step into this, as I laid out two contrasting points, and I said that in one case you work towards a particular end, and in the other case you work for the work itself. And you began by saying that these two are not really contrasted towards each other, but they are one. And then you tried to radicalize this whole idea of work. You said that it's not about the external, it's about the internal. It's not about the work, it's about from where the work is coming. And you again created two sectors of that space from where the work is coming. So even these two sectors, one of discontentment, deficiency, and the other of fulfillment. So can one not say that even these two sectors are like the other two sectors that are presented, and even these two are apparently contrasted to each other? They are also one.
No, they are not contrasted to each other, because there are no two sectors to really contrast.
In this case,
when we are saying one of them is false, it really means there is only one.
but the other also exists. In fact, the other is that which is prevalent.
Exists for whom? When you say existence, for whom does this second origin, the origin of ignorance and incompleteness, exist? We are addressing that now. So, we are not told why Adam and Eve were created in the first place. Alright. We are told how they were corrupted, but we are never told why they were created. So you can never really go to the absolute beginning of the story, because at the absolute beginning of the story lies God, and God cannot be known by definition. Otherwise, we'll have to call him and make him sit on this chair and ask him the first question, that you tell us first of all, why did you begin the whole story? We will call the serpent later. The serpent only corrupted what you created first. And why did you create products that were corruptible? If you are God, then your creation should be godly. How are you creating these corruptible products? No, it's import goes beyond the joke. So the imperfection comes from the perfect source. Remember this. Don't go beyond that. The corruptible Adam and Eve are coming from the perfect creator. Now do you see why falseness does not really exist? Yet to you it seems like existing. You reconcile these two things. First, perfection can only give rise to perfection. Second, perfection looks like giving rise to corruption. But which of these is the more irrefutable thing? The more irrefutable thing is that the creativity of the creator carries all the qualities of the creator. If Adam and Eve are the creativity of the creator, then they cannot be anything but godly. But to you, they look
unholy, ungodly, corrupted.
So all that appears to be unholy, ungodly, corrupted coming from the second center is actually false. It just appears unholy. It is not. Because it is coming from God. Or do you want to say that a perfect creator commits mistakes? Do you want to say that?
And one can also argue the other way around. One can say that since the creation is imperfect, this can also, if one not begins with the assumption that the perfect creator leads to perfection, one can say that since the creation is imperfect,
so the creator is also imperfect. Of
but
course.
that would again be a loop. Then
no, it would not be a loop. In fact, it is a very good statement to make that whatever looks like imperfect comes from an imperfect source, and that imperfect source cannot be God. It can only be your own mind. So whenever you look at any imperfection, you must know you are creating it. Kindly spare God. God is not creating it. Your own argument is a great argument of theism. You wanted to probably prove that God is imperfect, but you have inadvertently proven that whatever looks like imperfect has no role of God in it, because God is, what we are talking of is a concept driven by faith. All this God business. Otherwise, you cannot really go ahead and prove any of this thing about perfection or imperfection. Without faith, it is not possible. Getting it? So, what looks like imperfect also comes from the perfect. What looks like imperfect also comes from the perfect. That is why it is variously said that the truth shines even in its own absence. If it looks like truth, it is truth. If it looks like false, it is still truth, because truth is all that there is. But man wants to assert the false also. And one of the ways of asserting the false is to fight the false. In fighting the false, you are acting as if the false really exists. And when you are fighting the false, what are you doing? You are saying there exists a godless space. There exists a certain falseness, and I have been interested with fighting it. So who am I? I am God's savior. God could not help himself. Now I am coming to help him. The second center appears second because you do not see the unity between the first and second, because you do not see the unity between the creator and the creation. That will now bring us to how this myth that there does exist a separation get propagated and strengthened. Firstly, we said that there are actually no two centers. Now we are trying to see how the second center actually becomes a dominant thought in our minds. When the second center becomes a dominant thought, then you want to work. Then you say there is something wrong with the world and me, and I need to correct it through work. You see, go back to your very scriptures, and when you are told that what is happening is a separation from God, then obviously it becomes dominant on your mind that this separation needs to be reduced. And most scriptures have done this. They have repeatedly told you that your life as a human being is some kind of a departure from Godhood. They've also kept the door, the option to return open. Now that you have been separated, you can do such and such things to come back to God. And that is called as heaven. Attainment of heaven, liberation, nirvana, moksha, whatever. But they have all asserted that you have been separated. Now when you have been separated, and that is drilled into the child's mind since a young age, what else is he going to do? He is going to place totally needless value upon work. Now he'll work. Are you seeing what is happening? Now mother will tell him, you're not alright, and he'll believe. Now neighbors will tell him, your grades are inferior compared to grades of somebody else, and he will believe. Now teachers will tell him, you need to become a responsible citizen, and he will believe. Now all this becoming thing will come into the picture. I need to become. Actually, the whole becoming desire is just a desire to return to the God source. But returning becomes relevant only when you have been first convinced that you have strayed away. Who convinces you that you have been pushed out of heaven in the first place? It begins with the scriptures, and it is carried forward by the various forces in the family, society, and the classroom. Are you getting it? That is why it is extremely important that someone must arise and say that it is of much greater importance to keep asserting that God created man in his own image. And that too has been said, but not been given due importance and not been interpreted rightly. God's image will be God himself. But man has been so afraid to declare his godhood that he starts worshipping some god outside of himself. Till the time you believe that you are just an imperfect creation of a perfect source, your life will be mired in suffering.
Which you would term as work.
You are trying to cure yourself of a disease which you do not have. It is far easier to convince a man that he is a depraved being, a misfit not worth living. But to convince somebody of the godliness in him is almost impossible. That is the point to which we have been brought by the misinterpretation of the scriptures and an education system that focuses so much on becoming. You see, in India, the highest word that the Vedic literature has uttered is Aham Brahmasmi. And that has been recognized as one of the great utterances, Mahavakyas. But still, in popular culture, if someone rises up and says, I indeed am Brahma, he would probably be lynched. And if he is not lynched, he would be taken as extremely arrogant. It would be taken as a declaration of the ego, which it might indeed be. We are not denying that. 99% of the times it would be from the false center that you would rise up and claim that you are God.
But this cynicism is has got such deep roots in our minds that we rule out the possibility.
We entirely closed the possibility. It's not even a possibility, it's the reality. What do you mean by possibility? Possibilities deal in probabilities. Here the probability is 1. It is not the possibility, it is the present reality of which there is no substitute. You and I sitting and talking to each other here is God talking to himself. But you will be so shy of saying that or admitting that. Look at the way you are smiling. This is the only thing that brings you to this nervous smile. God talking to himself. Too much for my little ego to bear. When you have convinced man of his littleness, is it any wonder that now he behaves in a petty manner? When you have totally convinced man of his pettiness, how else will he behave? And then you use his behavior as a proof of his pettiness. What rubbish is this? From where is his behavior coming? From where is his behavior coming? Please understand what happens when you take a kid to the temple or a church or a mosque, wherever. You say, that is God. Right? Especially if it's a temple carrying a deity. You say God is there. So if God is there, then surely He is not
Godly.
here. Because that is what we see in this material world. If something is there, then it cannot be. That is the very definition of something being there. There, not here. You say, keep your sandals outside the temple premises, leave them there. Now for sure you are teaching the kid that where you left your sandals, God is not there. Now you may keep lecturing him on the omnipresence of God. He is never really going to take you seriously. He has taken his lesson. Where I keep my sandals, God is not there. What is the point now in telling him that God is everywhere? Where is God? There in the sanctum sanctorum. Not outside it. We have created a godless world. By saying that God created this world, we have pushed God out of this world. You need a clear understanding that God really did not create anything outside of Himself. That the creation is not at all different from the Creator. That you do not really need temples, because every bit, every point is a temple. If you need a temple, then you need work to go to the temple. Do you understand? This is what work is. Where I am, a temple is not really there. So I need to do something to reach a temple. No, that is work. A feeling of incompleteness, a feeling of the greatest not being with you. So you have to then do something. Your own doership comes into question now. You have to do something to reach there. Now, becoming and a future become important. Because all doing takes time. So it will happen only in the future. And the more you have a people who believe in God being different from His creation, the more that society will be inclined towards work. And that is the reason probably for the machine-like productivities of the Western nations. The concept of sin has been so deeply implanted in the mind of their populations that they cannot get over it. For them, just being born is sin. So all their life, all they are doing is repentance. And they are repenting by working hard and harder and harder and producing things and destroying the planet along with their own lives. You have convinced them totally of the virtue of work, which cannot be done without firstly convincing them of their own worthlessness. I am so worthless that I need to somehow become and prove worthy of just existing.
But even in cultures where this idea of original sin has not existed, even these cultures have not done anything different. They have done, in fact, the opposite. They have gone into indifference. Like the culture we live in, so the idea of original sin, according to me, does not exist. But still, people here have become indifferent towards work. They are not working because this drive does not exist to repent, to go back.
And so you must be very careful while looking at things. The original sin idea very much is prevalent here.
Okay.
In India, in East, everywhere. You see, wherever there would be thought, wherever there would be an idea related to anything, an idea related to a stone, related to a car, a machine, a man, a woman, a picture, anything, wherever there is an idea, that idea is always related to original sin. In fact, ideation itself is the original sin.
Oh.
You'll have to, why do you ideate? Why? Why do you need to have ideas?
To arrive at a particular conclusion.
And why do you need that? Why do you need that?
Because there is a lack of clarity in the mind, perhaps.
Right. So the perfect has given rise to lack of clarity. And that is the original sin. That is the original sin. So never say that in India we don't have the idea of original sin. You have other ideas, and any idea.
It's the idea of a departure from.
Any idea. You have other ideas here.
So
You do have the idea of returning back to Godhood, or don't you have that? What else is moksha? What else is moksha? And what are you returning to if you never departed? All your scriptures repeatedly talk of moksha and that it is the highest attainable. What do you mean by attaining moksha? So the fact is, if you really read the scriptures, they are not saying that moksha is to be attained. They are simply saying that samadhi is your sabhav, that it is what is. It is already there. But in the common culture, it is taken as an attainable, as a purusharth, that this is what man must get. Moksha. Now if you have to get moksha, then what do you have now? Now moksha is something that you will get in the future. So surely what do you have now?
Non-moksha.
Some non-moksha kind of stuff. Which is a punishment. So you see how this ideation business is related to punishment? And you see how all of this is just knowledge?
Okay. Right.
Do you see this? And do you also see how the societies that are so productive are also very knowledgeable? Do you see a relationship? You look at the Germans or the Japanese. Full of knowledge. I'm pretty sure number of patents per 1,000 population would be among the highest in these countries. They generate so much of knowledge. What is this thirst for knowledge? And knowledge has been taken as a god. It's an indisputable ideal. Knowledge must be generated. I want to question that. I want to severely criticize that. Why do you need knowledge? And don't you see that this race after knowledge is the central cause of all your misery and the destruction that you are bringing yourself to? You say you are knowledgeable, but you don't even understand that all knowledge is false. Knowledge is nothing but the building up of a concept based on another concept. All knowledge proceeds through definitions. And where do definitions come from? Are definitions an absolute, or are they all man-made? For anything to be absolute, it must be based on something absolute. But you define this thing to be that thing and that thing to be that thing. And then you proceed on that and then you claim I am very knowledgeable. And what do you use that so-called knowledge for? To play around with material, like kids. And you feel so happy when you are able to make a new toy. You call that great discovery or great invention, and you give these kids Nobel Prizes. Our entire consciousness is built around these things: the original sin, knowledge, productivity, punishment. And I also said illusion. I want to say knowledge is ignorance. Ignorance is not the absence of knowledge. Ignorance is the dominance of knowledge. When the Western mind says ignorance, all it means is lack of knowledge. It doesn't understand that ignorance is being knowledgeable. When you have knowledge, that is ignorance.
It seems so absurd to a knowledgeable mind.
To the knowledgeable mind. To the knowledgeable mind.
So you have basically radicalized the entire idea of the work. So work is not internal, external. So work is not what you do, but from where is it is coming. You have tried to create two, but still not two spaces. And you are saying that this discontentment, this lack of this greed for fulfillment, this exists because we have been conditioned to believe so. Otherwise, it is not real at all. The idea of the original sin, something with which I began my presentation, they don't exist at all. So this whole contrast between,
you see, Anshu, we all know that inferiority will lead to violence and all other kinds of sicknesses. Don't we know that? The fundamental inferiority to which we have been subjected is that man is inferior to God. And we have been told that this inferiority is absolute and cannot be bridged. All your life you are working just to get rid of this fundamental inferiority. That is what can also be called as the fundamental incompleteness or the original sin. Until man comes to see that he is one with God and in no way smaller, he will continue to have this stupid way of working. You are in a sense competing with God. You are always measuring God. You know, I am inferior, I need to reach there.
right.
So how high is God? I need to reach there. And that's a totally ungodly act. Because God never measures himself.
Now I can see it very clearly. And since this whole thing has taken such deep roots in our unconscious, that we have become completely unaware of this conditioning, and B, very interestingly, we are trying to bridge it. And now, how does this attempt happening in the modern world? So that God, who was the father of Adam, that God in today's world is my boss. So the deep desire of the unconscious is that I have to bridge gap with that God. But since I cannot do it, I know very unconsciously, I know it's
You are
so
stuck between two impossible definitions. One, God cannot be attained. Second, I will not rest till I attain God. Together, what do these two mean? First, God by definition is unattainable. That is what your culture has told you. Second, something that arises from within, which again is a product of, at least a semi-product of conditioning. I cannot rest till I get God. So together, what do these two give you? I can never rest. And that is what you have, a restless life. You might be chasing anything. You might be chasing a productivity target. You might be chasing a new car. You might be chasing a bigger property. But you must realize that essentially all you are doing is trying to wash your original sin. You are chasing God. And by definition, he cannot be chased.
Yeah, and very interestingly, perhaps unknowingly, we have made a very big claim, a giant claim, and you, not I, I'm trying to understand it. And so we are saying that this modern society, the premise upon which it postulates itself, it says secularism, and it's deeply religious in some sense. Religious not in the sense of religiosity, but in the sense of, so when it says, you get what I'm trying to say?
You see, all religion is man-made.
These roots, these myths are still there.
Yeah, of course.
These myths, they haven't died.
Of course.
They haven't.
But then don't equate them with religion. And if you do equate them with religion, then don't give a lot of value to religion. You see, what is religion?
Right. I mean authoritative religion of doctrines and all.
And all of them are man-made. And all of them rest upon the assumption that there is a need to return to the center. That there is a need to attain God. That's the basic premise of religions. Do religions take you towards God, or are they the reason why you feel godless? Is not every religion telling you this is the way to attain God? And you feel grateful. Oh, finally somebody is there to guide me. If you have something right here and somebody guides you towards the same thing there, is he guiding you or misguiding you?
He is misguiding.
If you just look at little towards yourself, you will know that you have the stuff with you. But he is saying keep looking there and you will get that stuff there. Is he guiding you or misguiding you? But he is very generously offering his hand and with great authority he is saying, you keep looking there, I know the truth, you will find him there. This is a conspiracy in some way to prevent you from turning inwards.
So if I were to summarize whatever we have discussed up till now, I'll put it in a nutshell and say that I began by asking you very emphatically. I gave you two definitions of work. I tried to draw these definitions historically. I told you that one is that you work for a particular end, you work for money, and the other is that you work for creativity. You try to work for the process itself, and you have entirely radicalized this this structural conception of mine, and you're saying that it's It's not about what for you are working. It's about from where are you working. Are you working from a feeling of discontentment, a feeling of incompleteness, or are you working just because out of the sheer joy of fulfillment?
Yeah, I mean, everything is anyway moving. It is not moving because it is feeling sad. When you look at this physical universe, it is a universe of movement, of change. But nothing in this universe is moving because it is feeling miserable, except man. The stars are moving, sun is moving, moon is moving, animals are moving. Everything is moving. Nothing is still. The pace of movement might be different. But nothing is moving to gain fulfillment, spiritual salvation. Man is the only one who is moving because he wants God. That only proves that man is the only one who is godless. Yes, some egoists may come and say that only proves that man is the only one who wants God. I would say no. That proves that man is the only one who firstly feels that he is godless.
Because you want only that which you don't have or are.
What comes first? The drive
or the lack? The lack comes first.
The lack comes first, and then you have the drive.
Right. So far so good. So it's the lack, and which is a conditioning, which is something, an idea that has been planted into our minds, which is making us work and work like madmen, go into any profession that is promising us that it can bridge that primordial gap, right? It is this lack. But when I look at it sociologically, so you are saying that work is happening because there is lack, and we have to agree upon this fact that it is a reality in the world, sociological world, in the society, that people are working merely because they feel discontent, because they don't, I mean, there is no fulfillment in their hearts. So the first case is a rare thing, right? They're working merely because they don't feel fulfilled. So according to this conception of ours, they cannot attain fulfillment, of course, by working. So it's not a matter of which profession you choose.
Yes.
Of course it is not.
Very well
a matter
said.
of which profession you choose.
Wonderfully said.
So the last question that which I thought would be a crucial question in this discussion, that which Marx also raises. So in a community gathering, the mode of production, the means of production would change, the kind of works, professions you do would change radically, right? So it's not about what you're doing, whether you're doing this kind of work or that kind of...
Do this or do that, how does it matter?
But it does matter. Like, you look at the face of a security guard, you look at the face of...
You don't like his face, don't do that. You have complete freedom. When it doesn't matter what you do, it means you have complete freedom to do anything. Because it doesn't matter.
But it matters to the security guard. If he leave his job...
He can leave his job.
No, he won't be able to earn his livelihood. His family would starve.
You see,
so
that's the whole thing.
I'm saying
being what he is, he cannot leave his job.
But he is what he is, and he cannot leave the job, so what?
He is what he is. Is his self-belief, not an absolute truth. It is his self-concept. Just because, don't be taken in by a man's show of confidence. Just because he says a few things in a very personal and intimate way, do not think that those things are coming from him. The security guard might say, it is my life, it is my wife, and I have 10 kids, and I have a house to run, and I have this and that, and one must take care of his responsibilities, and I have my old parents to take care of, and I have to follow this, I have to follow that. You have to clearly see that all of this is just ideation. Was the guard born with these thoughts?
Surely he was not, but currently he's living in that loop, and the person sees no way out at all.
So what is an idea? Go back to that discussion. What is an idea?
Which is based upon another idea.
We said an idea is something which you have because you want fulfillment. And when you say you want fulfillment, what you are saying is that the perfect is giving rise to imperfection. Again, that same old mistake. Whatever that security guard is saying about himself is not his. It has been put in his mind by various forces. Now he has internalized it so deeply that it appears that it is his identity, that it is coming from within him. It is not coming from within him. It's not him at all. He has actually no relationship with his wife. He does not know anybody.
So don't you have anything to, so next step, don't you have anything to say about this whole game upon which this whole game of injecting ideas into people's mind, conditioning them, and so the market of today's market forces, they realize that man is, that they realize that we have injected a certain idea of lack in his mind. They are quite aware of that old myth that God, so and the man is imperfect, and they are working upon this incompleteness, this feeling of incompleteness, and hence as a result, all these different professions which are completely non-creative, mechanical, are coming up. So don't you have to say about this, and anything about this, that the kinds of works that are prevalent, there is no rasa in them.
There is no rasa even in the idea that you are not God. So you have to go back to it. Do not blame the market forces of today. The market forces of today are not coming from nowhere. They are coming from the entire stream of thought of mankind. They are coming from the entire stream of thought. Is there any juice in, first of all, thinking that you are a stupid, lousy thing who has been thrown into a hostile world and who is condemned to always remain imperfect? What rust do you see in this idea? And when this idea came, there was really no capitalism or market-driven economy. So don't really blame any ism. Blame ideation itself. This ism or that ism, all of them are ideas claiming to provide man with fulfillment. What does an ideology, any ideology, eventually promise? Fulfillment. It may differ in the means, the ends, its entire outlook, the way it models the universe. But ultimately it promises fulfillment. Even the definition of fulfillment might be different from in one ideology from the other. Yet they all offer their own varieties of fulfillment. You want a way out? The way out is to just keep seeing that anything that tells you that there is something really, really wrong with you, anything that gives you a dream, anything that gives you a destination, is false. And you'll have to refrain from calling these your dreams and your destinations and your goals and your targets. They are not yours. They are being artificially layered upon you. Why should you allow that to happen?
So it's quite possible that apparently at the external level, the work you are doing is very mechanical, non-creative. But you might be doing it with joy. It's very much possible. So it's not about the work that you are doing.
Not at all.
And the vice versa, the opposite is also true.
Seeking fulfillment through work is stupid. Pitiable are those people who say that, this particular work is my passion. But the commons love these people. Somebody comes and says, I am a folk singer and I love my work. It's like saying I love my medicine when I'm not even sick. I love my medicine when I'm not even sick. It doesn't matter which brand of medicine you are using. But how can somebody love his work? Yes, you can be love personified, and then any work is alright. Whatever you would be doing, you would bring the quality of love to it. But that quality would not be provided by the work. You are saying that love is located outside of you and work will bring it to you. It's foolhardy. Absolutely foolhardy. And you have managers and bosses saying you must love your work. The fellow has no love in his heart. How can there be love in the work? He does not love his wife, his kids, the dogs, the goats, the elephants, the rivers. He has never loved anything. Now you are saying love the work. Whom are we fooling? So you should be able to see through the stupidity of all this thing. I really love technology. Oh, nerds and geeks. And he's sitting the entire day in front of his system and mine is a startup and I'm working towards a new patent. And he is madly in love with this work. You read his mind. The bugger is afraid of roaming into the wild. He's actually hiding his face in front of the screen. That's all. Can't go anywhere else. Scared of the wife, scared of the neighbors, scared of the universe, scared of existence itself, scared of his own minds and thoughts. What does he do? Sit in front of the system but as a face-saving device, he says, I love my work. Yeah, I love my poison. I love my medicine. When I'm not even sick.
This is, with this understanding, if you are saying that it's not in the work, and B, one and all the work are one and the same. A, that it's not in the work, which work you do, and B, that all the works are one and the same. One thing happens instantly is that the whole hierarchy of works that the society has created, you just collapse it in one moment.
Of course.
You say that the cobbler is, as good as the CEO, and you're saying something momentous.
And I'm not saying this out of moral virtue. Not at all. I'm saying this as a fact. And I'm not even saying that they are the same. I'm saying the CEO might be worse than the cobbler if he's working from the second center.
Not what you're doing, but from where you are doing it.
Of course.
Are you doing it from a feeling of
course.
completeness, joy, or from a certain lack?
So, if you need to have an objective, that objective needs to be set your center straight. Not to choose the right work, but to choose the right center. You know, if you really want to have a life work, that life work cannot be about choosing the right work externally, but about choosing the right center internally. Am I choosing the right center? Choose the right center, and then the right center itself will suggest to you, rather dictate the right work.
And can this right center be not founded by working? Can you not?
No.
There's no way.
No. You cannot come within you from outside. You cannot leap outside of you to come back to yourself.
Is work merely material? I mean, thinking?
By definition. By definition. Because work involves happening. Happening means space and time. Space and time is material.
Yes. So this hierarchy collapses, and it collapses
totally
really
collapses.
bad.
Totally collapses. If you really need to have something to do in life, then do find your real center. That is what is worth doing.
Oh wow! And what we are doing is we are doing the exact opposite. We are finding the work and then
which suits your existing center. When you talk of doing, you are finding work which suits your existing center. Whereas the only work worth doing is finding the right center. Find the right center, and the right center will find the right work for you. And that right work will be as mischievous and dynamic and childlike as the right center. Innocent. In fact, fickle in some way. It can continue with one thing for years and years, or it can say, I want to change. With the right center, whatever work you choose will be right. That is what I call as complete freedom. See, please understand, complete freedom does not mean randomness. Complete freedom does not mean a throw of dice. When we have said that all works are the same, what we have said is that you have complete freedom in choosing this or that, which does not mean randomness. Which means that there is nothing that bars you out of your understanding from the right center. All kinds of works are possible. It doesn't mean that if you are working as a butcher, that is the same as working as a writer. When you shift centers, there is a great possibility that the work would also change. If you are working as a killer, as a slayer of animals, and you discover your real origin, then it is highly unlikely that you would continue in the same profession. Your profession will change. But what would you change it to? We do not know.
You may pick up obscure works, you may create something new.
You may create something.
A Kabir can be a weaver.
Or you may just retire, I don't want to. Why must one keep doing something?
Because you anyway do anything when you feel the lack. I don't feel it anymore.
You don't feel it anymore. And one day if I find that I am totally short of food or clothes,
Okay.
I may just again pick up my worksman clothes and go out to work. It's okay. I'm not too rigid about retirement either. I can anytime revoke my retirement. There are no ideals when you are at the right center. Today you can declare I am retiring. 5 days later you can say no. If the fellow comes and says, but you said you were retiring, you say, I said that 5 days back. Why are you living in 5 days back? Oldie. Come back to today. That is the thing with living from the right heart. You don't face contradictions. You are not confused. Whereas the man who is living morality, living with the burden of sin, faces contradictions at every step and he cannot reconcile them. He either accuses himself of foolishness or accuses others of hypocrisy. You don't see any contradictions. Going left, you can start walking right all of a sudden for no reason, and there's no contradiction in it. You can go out for a walk and sleep in the garden, and there's no contradiction here. You can go out because it's time for a fight, and you can return with that man as a friend, and there is no contradiction here. But if you are operating from the second center, then you will say, no, but he was supposed to be the enemy. You should have subjugated him. Why did you hug him?
And this is a common phenomenon when certain political ministers of a party, when they do not criticize the other minister, there's an entire fuss in the party. Why do you not? Because, it seems like a contradiction. And you can criticize somebody and be his admirer at the same time. That is what is meant by complete freedom. So then you can never say that I belong to a particular profession. Then this whole thing about division of labor becomes nonsensical. You cannot carry this identity. Who am I? A cobbler. Now why am I not parallelly a gardener, a lover, a fighter, and an astronaut? Why not? Why not? And with all these together, of course, I have to be a Superman. So add that to the list. So the only thing that has just instantly popped up out of this discussion is that if we have somebody who is doubly stuck, somebody who is working from the wrong center that we've discussed, who is working from a feeling of discontent, lack, and is also caught up in a kind of a work which has no scope of creativity at all, right? There are works which are completely dull. So this person is completely stuck, doubly stuck. So the only suggestion, the only tip that we have for them is that firstly, do not try to change the work. That would never help, right? So it's not about what you are doing, it's about from where you are doing. If you change the center, the work would automatically change. If the work
or may not change. It would change if it must change. It may not change.
The quality of your work, the way you engage with that work,
the quality of engagement would change.
Drastically.
In fact, nothing can be said about what you would do. And nothing must be said, because this inclination to determine what I would do comes from an inner insecurity. Why should I determine what I would do tomorrow? Tomorrow I could be a school teacher, a paraglider, a swimmer, or a cook. Why should I even try to determine what I would be tomorrow? My only responsibility is to determine whether I am at the right center. And then the center would determine the work for me. Let the center determine.
See, sir, one thing that I can see very clearly is, now I'm reflecting upon, I'm recalling the way I brought forward this topic. I posited it in a historical context. Now, currently it seems to me that the worthwhile question is not what is work, what are the things one should work for. The worthwhile question is, how does one engage with this fact that this history is sitting in your head? Because what has come up is that it's not about what you are doing, it's not about anything, anything concrete as such. It's about the fact that certain things have been injected in your mind, like this biblical myth of Adam and Eve, something which I thought is substantial, so substantial that it would be the foundation of entire presentation. And now I can see that it is the main cause which has led to this misreadings of the whole idea of work. So perhaps the last question, and something that I should have begun with, right? So how does one come to terms with this deep unconscious conditioning, right? I am working because I feel a I feel a deep lack, and that is the reason I am working. And it is upon this lack only that the market forces are, it is this lack only that they are catering. So this deep conditioning, how do I come to terms with it? How do I make it conscious? How do I realize it? So that security guard, how does the security guard sit at one point of time in his life?
If you closely look at the flow of this discussion, you will realize the way out. You started by presenting one historical narrative as opposed to another historical narrative. You have to see that history is a continuity because history is man's mind. So you will not be able to go past history by seeking refuge in history. One bit of conditioning cannot be a cure for another bit. One idea cannot cure the damage caused by another idea. Conditioning leads to suffering, yet people do not come out of it. Do you know why? Because they do come out of it to re-enter conditioning through another gate. When I suffer, I do come out of where I am suffering. But I enter another room. I enter another flat. One historical solution fails me. So what do I go to? Another historical solution. One girlfriend fails me. What do I go to? Another girlfriend. One ideology goes bankrupt. I flock towards another ideology.
This is interesting. So feudalism fails me, I go to capitalism. Capitalism fails me, I go to socialism.
I go to some ism. I go to some woman. I go to the next thought. I go to the next man-made system. What I do not realize is it is all ultimately coming from here.
But if I were to argue like a common man, like in common parlance, is the outcome only argument that we can give against, the fact that no ism has ever worked out? the fact that no religion has ever been able to fulfill mankind's desire. Is this the only argument? Is this empirical observation the only argument, or we have some other argument
You
also?
have to live in facts. Any other argument would be imaginary. The best possible argument that can be given is a factual argument, right? You have been trying it since
But what
the
about
beginning
this?
of time.
But what about this? It hasn't worked up till now. It will work.
Then when you are going into imaginations, because you're talking of will, your future, then you can be given an imaginary argument. Because whatever the imaginary argument will be, whatever you will come up with in future will just be some kind of a permutation combination of what you have already come up with. When this has not worked, how will that work? Have you ever come up with anything new? You have always come up with another idea. And the very urge to ideate comes from a feeling of. So, what will you come up with in the future? Another idea. That idea might be a combination of 1,000 ideas or whatever, because there are anyway no new ideas. You can combine them in a seemingly new way. But they all emerge from the same false center. So don't commit that same mistake of seeking shelter in another idea when all the previous ones fail.
So this discussion has somehow has touched points which were, never meant to be touched. As you said that I'm sure we'll have to begin from scratch, and we literally began from scratch, and we touched those points that were, in my understanding, not to be touched, or those points that were out of the context. So if I were to summarize this discussion, which seems very digressive but has some coherence in it, I said work is either towards a particular end or for the process itself. You countered this assumption, this model of mine, and you said that, Anshu, it's not about whether you're working for something or whether you're working for the process. It's not about the object of your work, it's about the subject of work, it's about the quality, it's about the center from which you are working. And then we discussed at length about the idea of the lack, the discontentment, and now we have arrived at a point where I can see, at least I can see, and I hope that the audience has also been able to see, that the whole game about changing professions, the whole game about changing isms, the whole game about changing ideas would never work, is bound to fail, because at the very foundation of this game of becoming is the idea that you lack in something. And unless we go deep down and check that lack, right, things won't fix. So instead of questioning, what is work, what is creativity, what all professions are the ones that have to be picked in today's society, we have to raise more fundamental questions. We have to ask who works, and whoever works with what quality of mind. So at this note, I would like to thank you, Acharya Prashant. It was really a nice discussion, and I hope the audience has been helped.
Welcome. Thanks a lot.